Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Bluelight webinar. This is a very special one today. They're all special, actually. But just to introduce myself, I'm Brendan from Bluelight, and welcome to my office. Welcome to my office. Ordinarily, I would have loved to have done this webinar with our special guest today in person, but because of the coronavirus, we can't do that, so we're doing it via webinar. And I'm delighted to welcome Superintendent Sukesh Verma to this webinar, where we're going to talk about all things police recruitment. So I'm absolutely delighted to have you here today. Sukesh, would you like to just tell me a little bit about you and your role?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me, Brendan. I really appreciate the time, and I think that you've got a great following. I'm the superintendent lead in Nottinghamshire for Operation Uplift, and also around learning and development. So that's our trained schools and all the assets around it. So that's my current role, which is a bit of a challenge in current times. But obviously, you and I have had many conversations around that particular area. I mean, and then alongside the other usual command portfolios that hold sort of firearms command, pace on call, and other things like that.
I don't know how you find the time for it, honestly. So we're in, you know, if you're watching this live, you know where we are. If you're watching this in a few months' time, I hope you're watching it thinking, I'm glad we're out of it. So you know, in a couple of months' time, I hope we return to a new normal, whatever that might be. But you know, first of all, my warmest wishes and my best regards and my compliments to you, all of Nottinghamshire Police, not just the police officers, but all the support staff that are making it happen. Naturally, to the police out there, you know, I've got nothing but immense kudos for you all, because you're doing a very difficult job. All of you in the 999 are doing an incredibly difficult job. So how is NOTS managing at this moment in time?
It's really a challenge that I don't think we've ever seen, and I don't think we'll probably ever see something like this again. No one knows. We were talking about this in the office earlier. No one knows what the world will look like afterwards. The approach from us in NOTS is very much around education. We've seen the 4 E's that have come out. We haven't really gone towards the line of the enforce. We've gone around the educate, because there is still a great deal of education that needs to be done. But we're also, I think people forget that police are human beings, and we're doing that. We also go home to our families. We were talking off air about, you know, the fact that we've got children, the fact that we've got partners, and so there is that reality that this isn't something that we can just say that is the challenge. We can see it and we can deal with it. This is something that's invisible, and it's only by literally just before we come on that webinar, I've done a video blog around stay at home, save lives, because that is what we need to do. We need to keep people in, and it's going to be a test over the next few weeks because the weather's getting better. No doubt, if this had happened in really cold, wet, drizzly, you know, we call it PC rain, don't we, Brandon?
Yeah.
When the weather was terrible, we wouldn't probably be facing the same challenge that we've got now. But this is where policing by consent comes into its own. This is where that community mantra of looking after each other comes in. So we are working hard on trying to keep people away. Demand has started to go down, as you expect, but then there's new challenges that emerge, and we've just got to look after our doctors and our nurses and our carers and the people that are doing a phenomenal job. And when you look at the pecking order, yes, the police are a part of that key worker programme because we've got to be there, but you know what, there's some unbelievable work going on, not by just the NHS, but you know, people that are going in, day out to service the supermarkets and keep that key line going around medicine as well. So we're there to do our bit. As you know, we will constantly support. I think we've had a good flavour in NOTS. In terms of our workforce, our abstraction levels are pretty low. When you look at the rest of the country, we're nowhere near 20% yet, which is good because I think we've put measures in place. And the priority this morning is making sure that PPE is out, that protective kit is out with the officers, and making sure that we just keep people distant. And if we do that, then hopefully, you know, in weeks and months to come, we can start to get back to having actual face-to-face contact, which will be good.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And that's really good to hear that, how everyone's doing. And I'm sure everyone who's watching at this moment in time would join me in passing on my warmest wishes, from the heart. Everyone's doing an incredible job. This morning, I waved and almost saluted our bin men who are picking up the recycling, because they're doing an amazing job as well. Everyone's pulling together. It's just incredible. And a lot of the people who are watching this will be thinking, so police recruitment, the big fear they have is that it's going to stop. So I've seen some of your intakes starting, and how are you managing that?
Yeah, the wheel is still very firmly on in knots around that. We're keeping it going. We had a record-breaking intake actually in March of 72 new officers, and then COVID came along. And the way that we've kept it going is that everyone in Knots gets issued with one of these. So a touchscreen laptop that you get from day one, and all of our training teams are now working with those candidates remotely. So we've sent away our most vulnerable student officers. They're working from the protection of being at home, but they're getting all their legal and law input on the system. So it's a live webinar, what we're doing now, and some fabulous tech where you can have your breakout rooms and still do it. So the aim and the objective is that we keep going. We keep that probationer and student training going. We want to make sure that we support our staff. We don't stop anything, but we've just got to think differently. We've got to innovate, and we've got the tech to do it. It's just about us doing that. And it's worked so far. I'm going to touch a very, very big piece of wood here. It is, touch wood, it's working well. Feedback is great. We've been doing it now for 2 weeks, and the cohorts are loving it. And what we've actually done also with our student cohorts is we had a large number of experienced specials on there. And what we've done with those experienced specials is we've dragged them out of those cohorts, and we've put them into frontline neighbourhood police as a cohort, as a group, so them together, and then we'll just put them on an expedited course at the end. So training of our new cohorts is going well. And then we've just reframed the way that we do business around recruitment. So instead of actually doing the big face-to-face recruitment seminars that we would with, Claire and Ron and the rest of the team have done some amazing work in getting a really good webinar together where they will answer questions of candidates. Because we're committed. We took 282 last year, new officers, for a 2,000 force. Strong force, that's a monumental number of new recruits. We're probably one of the only forces that's done uplift in year 0 instead of year 1, which has now worked in our favour. And then this financial year, we're taking another 250. So we are looking at big numbers, and we want to keep that cycle going. So we've got 2 webinars running tomorrow, and they're available through Eventbrite, and that's where Claire will be hosting them, and there'll be the Q&A about the specifics to do with knots in there. So very much trying, although it's not business as usual, we're trying to make sure that we carry on doing what we need to do to get our new officers through.
Yeah, no, interesting to hear that, and I'm quite sure a lot of the people who are watching this would be liking everything you're saying there, because I know there's 1 or 2 forces out there who I think are struggling in terms of how to keep recruitment going, how to keep training going. Mainly the smaller forces, the ones I've heard about. I'm not going to mention their names, but the part of you mentioned at the end about business as usual. I'm just wondering, it's a bit of a rhetorical question because I don't think any of us have got an answer to this, but to what extent will the new business as usual be influenced by the innovation that's taking place today? I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's changed the way that we can and we do business. I think what it's shown is that, particularly when we look at, I'll give you an example. So we talk around the challenge which we've had historically in every force, in every area, right the way before Macpherson and since, around the challenges around the young black community and the lack of engagement, the lack of recruitment from those communities. And a lot of that, when we've done some quick and dirty research, we've seen a lot of that is around stigma. So if we put on a big event in the council house and we want people to come in and be seen, historically, that might have been an issue, because there might have been people from the community, you know what, I really want to be a police officer, I want to join, but if I risk being seen going to an event such as this in its infancy stage, I might be an outcast in my community. That's just one example of where actually doing it in the safety and the security of your own home, where you don't have to fear about who's going to see you, is a benefit. Take it in another guise. People who are perhaps single parents or have childcare issues, and they struggle to find someone to have the children at 6 o'clock because they've already done the day at work, and then it's rush hour and they've got to get in to see a physical presentation and meet the staff. They might find it tough. Well, actually now all of a sudden we've changed the way that we do business. So why wouldn't we carry that on? Because if it unlocks new opportunities with new communities and new groups and more diverse groups, it's going to be of a benefit to us. Absolutely.
No, that's interesting to hear that. And I joined one of the webinars last week, and I've got to say that I think once Claire and Ron really got into their flow, and it became very conversational, it was just fascinating to listen to, and the questions that were rolling in, the interaction from people was just fantastic. And actually, that's a good segue actually for me to just say to everyone who's watching this, because we've had one person ask a question already in the chat function to say, what about probationer training? And I think you just answered that one. But listen, I've got questions here for Sukesh that I can ask him. But these are just the foundation questions. If you've got any questions at all, then please do utilize the chat function on this webinar, and I'll pick them up, and I'll pose them to Sukesh, and we'll see where it takes us. So yeah, the new normal, whatever that might be, I think those webinars are great. You can get so many more people into a room in respect of you know, those council buildings, some of those rooms, especially the ones that I've met some of your candidates in, really stuffy, sometimes not the right size. And like you say, you know, there might be a certain stigma to it. And even if there's not a stigma to it, there might be people thinking, do you know, the last time I walked in there was when I had to do whatever it might be. They might have a bad memory of something, or they may be looking at everyone and thinking, there's not many people who feel and look like me. But when you're doing it in the comfort of someone's home, then, you know, that's automatically happening. So actually, I'm just seeing a question here about the national sharing of ideas between forces. Okay, so is there a national sharing of ideas between forces, or do directives come from the College of Policing? In reference to Brendan mentioning some smaller forces seem to be struggling. So that's a question that's come from Daniel, if we can take a look at that one.
So I'm making the assumption that Daniel is talking about the way that we deliver training. I'm assuming, because that was the guide. Yeah. There are directives that come out from the college, and there are various, but they're very high level, and often it's down for the forces to interpret how they can do that. The big driver around the college has been officers and staff safety. So it's around, how do we keep people safe? How do we follow the guidelines, but how do we still deliver? And sometimes that will fall on the toes, because each individual force is still responsible for delivering that probation or student training in whatever they call it in their respective forces. So in our force, we looked at that immediately on the outbreak of COVID, and we said, we need to do something now. We don't want to wait. We don't want to have, you know, we've got cohorts of 24, 25 people in a classroom. We can't have them in there. There's too much of a risk. So we need to do our bit. So the directive from the college is actually, you know, if we can innovate, clearly, it's down to the, and I generally would think that a lot of those forces that are struggling would struggle purely around finance and what they've invested into IT. To put it in context, every new recruit in Nottinghamshire will get a brand new Lenovo touchscreen laptop, which costs the best part of £1,000, and they get a smartphone on day one. So some forces will wait until they've passed the training and they're out as a probationer before they actually get that kit and equipment. We don't. We do it slightly differently. We want them to have it from the very beginning, so we give it to them on day one on their induction. That has just unlocked new potential for us, because yes, we've invested heavy cash at the beginning, but that has meant that we can start to ensure that we deliver what we need to. So the college's instructions are very, very simple. Do what you can, do it safely. Let's try and keep it going. We do have leads for uplift for each area. And our leaders, you know, for instance, we've got, and I won't mention names because it's unfair, but I know some local forces are still doing recruitment within the classroom with masks on. Well, I've got my own personal view on that. Well, I'll say what it is. It's crackers. Why are we going to put people in classrooms? So why are we not going to get them kitted out and sent home? There are critical parts of training that we will have to bring them in for, which is UDT, officer training, first aid. But there are then mitigating factors that we can put in place. So we can limit the sizes of the candidates. We can ensure that we do it in open air. We can make sure that there's no contact. We can make sure that they continually wash hands. So there's ways that we can do things, but we have to make sure that we're smart. From the very get-go, we put a risk register together. And without boring everyone on the chat group, you and I, Brent, know what they are like. And that's what we look at the risk for each area and how we mitigate it. And we went to town on that. And that has now come back to, you know, pay dividends, that we are keeping the wheel on. 72 new candidates. And in June, we will have another 24 joiners, and in July, another 24, and in August, another 24, until we again hit that 250 for this financial year. And we'll keep doing it that way. We'll keep investing in our new recruits, because if you don't invest in your new staff, they're not going to want to stay with you. They're going to leave. And there's a reason why we've been so successful in getting people to come across into our force, even on the transferee levels as well.
That's interesting to hear, and it's again, I know a lot of people watching this will be refreshing. It'd be refreshing for them to hear that. Another chief constables out there as well have been saying, look, you know, the recruitment tap isn't going to get turned off. Andy Rhodes, I think, from Lancashire Police actually used that language, that, you know, we'll be turning the tap on still. Dave Thompson from West Midlands Police, same message. We're still recruiting. And so certainly from my experience with the College of Policing as well, when Bluelight used to be an approved provider, they very much set the strategic direction, if you like. Then it was up to us in how we actually delivered it. And we had the freedom to be able to deliver the learning for the CKP, Certificate of Knowledge in Policing, in a way that met the needs of our learners, as long as it followed the curriculum. How you deliver that curriculum is very much, I'm sure from what you're saying, is down to the force. But I'm liking what you're saying about that social distancing. And I've seen some photographs of, you know, UDT being carried out with very few people in the room, and still managing to maintain that social distancing, and hearing of all sorts of other things from other forces about, we're sending half of them out and we're training some of them were fast track training as comms operators, custody officers. There's all sorts of innovation going on out there, and I think it's amazing what's going on, because it's just a few weeks in. You know, it's a few weeks in and forces are just innovating and doing different things. So, you know, again, kudos to the service for being so innovative, for being able to change, turn around on a sixpence. Amazing. Now, I'm just looking here, we've got some other questions. Daniel is actually saying here, Sukesh, I want to join your force. There you go. So if he wants to join your force, he needs to go to one of the Eventbrite webinars. I know Claire's sent me some of the links for those. So for those of you who are interested in joining in Nottinghamshire, I will put on the Bluelight Facebook group those links, and I'll put it on the Bluelight Facebook page. And if you want to know how to join that group, there's over 10,000 people in there. Can you believe that, Sukesh? Last week we hit 10,000 people. Oh my goodness.
Well, tell them that they're very, very welcome. That there's 2 webinars on tomorrow, and get registered. Get on them and get registered, because it's a great force to come to.
Well, I'll get that message out. And if you just go onto Facebook and look for Bluelight Police Recruitment, you'll find that group, ask to join, and that's where you'll find the information. So on that subject then, it's a great force. So here you go, Sukesh. What 3 things would you say makes Notts Police stand out from other forces?
Well, 3 things. Yeah.
We can go for just one if you want.
There's probably more than 3. I was going to say it's the other way around. It's a supportive workforce. We embrace difference in Notts, and it's a place where there's a significant challenge. And what do I mean by the last thing is Nottingham, as many of your viewers will know, Nottingham is still funded as a county force, although we're increasing that, and people are recognising that. But we've got metropolitan problems. It wasn't that long ago when I was a PC and a sergeant on the armed response cars, and we had a significant gun problem. We've had problems around organised crime gangs, which means that it's a busy place to work. So per officer, there is more workload on an officer in Nottingham than our counterpart forces. But what that means is that it's an exciting place to work, because there's not a dull moment, and it's policing at its best. We embrace difference. We are on track to become one of the most diverse workforces in every area of the protected characteristics, because we're committed to that. I'll give you an example. We've got a full program around neurodiversity to embrace issues that haven't normally been discussed. And in terms of a supportive workforce, we mentioned a couple of the chiefs, Dave Thompson and Andy Rhodes. We've got a chief in Mr. Craig Guilford, who's certainly very passionate around driving the front line forward, and we've seen that in terms of the fact that we've recruited heavily in year zero. We weren't supposed to recruit those extra 107 additional uplift officers until this year. We took them last year because we want to keep bolstering and doing more. So it's a good workforce to come to, and a cracking force.
Yeah, and actually I've been quite impressed so far, because Sukesh and I had a conversation, gosh, it must have been like 2 or 3 months ago now, maybe even longer, where Sukesh and Claire, the inspector, were looking to see what I could do to support some of that positive action work. And I've said no previously to other forces because it's just seemed like a tick in the box. But it was an interesting conversation once at Sukesh, and eventually I said yes. It's like Dragon's Den the other way around, wasn't it?
I remember yes.
Yeah, but I've been very impressed with that culture, actually, of innovating, of support. And for a lot of the people I've been supporting, they are actually Nottinghamshire Police employees already, wanting to join as warranted officers, and they've got a lot of positive things to say. So, I'm not just biased here. I've like I said, I've turned down working with a lot of forces because I just think they're trying to tick boxes. But Nottinghamshire genuinely committed to that sense of legitimacy. And why is that so important then, Sukesh, that we've got that legitimacy, that we've got that sort of that the service reflects the communities that it's a part of?
Well, I mean, if we're not a legitimate workforce, we seek to police by consent. We seek to get the support from our communities. When you think about it, Nottinghamshire as a county, including the city, is probably about 1.2, 1.3 million people. As a workforce, as a police officer workforce, we're over 2,000. As an entire establishment, we're about 3,500. You cannot police 1.2 million people unless you've got that legitimacy, unless you've got their consent, because we'd have anarchy. And the reason why we're so successful is because we work so hard with our communities to get on board so that they understand exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. I'll give you an example. In terms of recruitment, we'll keep it on that thread. We have got full success and support, of the independent advisory group, who are there to scrutinise the police, who are there to hold us to account, both the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable. They actually sit on our recruitment interviews. They actually help us with our programme because they believe in what we're doing. Now, if that's not an example of legitimacy, I don't know what is. They see us as embracing what we need to do to become an employer of choice, to service our diverse communities. We've got our city is 30% BAME. We've got a number of cultural issues that span across the country around legitimacy, and we've grabbed them by the scruff of the neck. We want to do more. We've got a programme in Notts, which I don't think is replicated anywhere in the country, where we've got a member of staff who will take vulnerable children and fast track them into the cadet programme. Previously, the cadets used to be vetted and you had to be of a certain ilk, allegedly, to get into the cadets. And that was the perpetual cycle, that our cadets were full of sons and daughters of police officers. And we would never break that cycle unless we do something different. we've now opened Police Connect bases on the sites where young teenagers were murdered. We've got one in Bulwell, and anyone can Google it. It's called the Larico Steed base at Bulwell. And Larico's mother actually supported us in opening that base, which is quite phenomenal, really. So at the location of where there was a gang problem and there was a young boy who was innocently murdered, we've now got a programme to support local youth and some of those who are vulnerable in the area. That is because we're committed to working from all areas, not just simply around the day-to-day policing bit that people see with the blues and twos and going to the jobs, but we've really spent time to build an infrastructure at a grassroots level around supporting our youth from all areas. So we've got a really prominent and expanding mini police programme, which is approaching 1,000 children. We pay for them to go into things like the Ben Kinsella Trust, which is around knife crime. And then we've got that going through. So all those examples of legitimacy that I give you is because we care, because we want to make a difference, because we're part of the community, and we want to be woven into that fabric. If we simply just come to work, as you know, Brandon, and put our stuff on, go out, do our bit, come back 9 hours later, lock the locker and lock the car and go home and don't care, well, we've lost exactly the ethos of what proper policing should be.
So that's interesting, that, and the direction that you may be going in there may be one that's a little bit more flexible around things like vetting, because that's the thing that seems to catch a lot of people out. Vetting, tattoo policy, holding on, for me, holding on to policies that existed 10 years ago. An example I'll give you, I'm not going to name the force, but when I was an associate for the College of Policing, we did some work around recruitment with a certain force and found out that they'd refused someone who was just an outstanding candidate in every way. I'm not going to embarrass them by highlighting why, because they might be able to identify themselves, but they had a tattoo policy of no tattoos on your hands. And this individual had a tattoo of his wife's name underneath his wedding band. So you couldn't even see it under the wedding band. But because he had a tattoo on his hand, he was failed. And there's other people who've had perhaps a brush with the law. And you know this as much as I do, that there's a lot of police officers who are in now who, if it, in a different, sliding doors type thing, they would have actually been refused access to the police because they may have got caught doing something when they were younger, doing something foolish at 14 that then means they can never join the police service. And I've got people, in the Facebook group who are so dedicated to the idea of joining the police, and they're in their 30s now. And these are people who've got fantastic jobs, fantastic roles within the community, doing some amazing things. They're family people, they've got children, but 15 years ago, they had a run-in with the law. So where's that going to go, Sukesh? Because I just can't see us holding on to those policies from yesteryear.
Well, I can only tell you about what we do in Notts, and what my desire would be is to replicate that nationally. So around vetting, anyone who fails vetting, we have a monthly meeting between me as the superintendent lead for Uplift and the superintendent for professional standards. And we will go through each one. And generally what that is a process where we don't just simply go, that's the vetting, do not pass, go, gone. Some people can't help who their family are. They can't help who their father or their brother or their mother. They can't help that. But what we will do is we will look at things and we will try to mitigate certain risks. I was talking with a commander from the Met recently, and we're both on the same page around this, and we're at writing. And what they did in writing, what they did in the Met for one candidate was he was such an outstanding candidate, but his brother had been locked up for an armed robbery, I believe it was. And what they said was that you're such a good candidate, but we can't risk you living at home. They put him in a section house on the other side of London, and they recruited him. So refreshing to hear that. I mean, we don't have the luxury of station houses in Nottingham. I don't think many forces outside of London do anymore. But what we can do is we can look in ways that we can work with that candidate to mitigate that risk and bring them in. Because otherwise we're just going to keep knocking on that locked door and we're not going to push it open. So around things like tattoos, we will review them. We've got a common sense policy, which is quite unheard of for the police. But we look at things and go, right, there's lots of, I've just walked through the armed policing area down there, and there are probably more people with tattoos than there are without. I feel like the outsider with no tattoos on. But then when you look at things like vetting and tattoos, we need to be pragmatic. We're dealing with a different generation of candidates. So we talk about millennials, that phrase that keeps coming out. Are we going to treat people the same way that we treated them in the 80s? When we've got a different generation, they've been taught differently, there's a different ethos on life. We need to grow with that. We need to move with that. We need to maintain standards and discipline, but that needs to be flexible in terms of when we look at certain issues. So we've been really good around that, Brendan. I don't think we've lost many through vetting. And if we have, even we've looked at every avenue that we can do. So I'll give you an example. We had a candidate who got refused point blank in another force because he had a written warning as a volunteer officer. And we looked at every way that we could conceivably. Ultimately, on that occasion, we couldn't because we were bound by regulations. But I'll tell you what we are doing is, as soon as those regulations cease to exist because that time lapse is over, I'll be requesting them to get refreshed through vetting to see whether we can support them. So we haven't forgotten about them, but we'll take that pragmatic approach.
Good. That's so refreshing to hear, and I see that in other forces as well. I've got a big up Sussex here because a couple of years ago, one of their PCSOs applied to join as a warranted officer. She was accepted, but she initially failed on vetting because her brother had a conviction. A brother who she'd not seen for years had a conviction for intent to supply controlled drugs. So they came up with a compromise, and this was a couple of years ago. So refreshing to see. Whereas other forces I know would just refuse her on that, even though she's a PCSO for them. And what they said was, you can't work in a certain part of Sussex, and it's your responsibility to tell us if your brother moves anywhere closer to us, to where you are. But I thought it was really refreshing that just to take that pragmatic view again.
And how sensible is that? Because
it's so sensible.
When you look at what Sussex have done, they've actually put the onus on the candidate because they're testing the candidate's integrity. They're saying, we want you are good enough. We would love to have you in. I mean, I think Sussex are a cracking force. I think that was the force that my father finished at, and he always spoke fondly about them. But that particular programme is saying to that officer, we want you. You're bound now by the code of ethics and and regulations. And if your brother moves and you haven't told us, and they're working in the same area, then the first person we're going to have that honest conversation with is you, because you know what the game is. And that is a really good way of looking at it. I like that. That's very good.
Yeah, there's that trust that, and the thing I liked about it was that sort of 10 peopleometer approach. It's something I used to use when I was a police officer, and the 10 peopleometer was, okay, we're going to take a pragmatic view, but we're in uniform thinking that we're taking a pragmatic, up-to-date view that would be accepted by society. And that links in with the fact that you've got IAG members on the interview boards. So, taking that one step further, the 10 peopleometer was, right, let's take the next 10 people who walk past the police station. We're not actually going to do it, but just imagine we do it. And then we're going to run that idea, run what we're going to do by them. And if the majority of them go, crack on, mate, that's brilliant, then we're doing the right thing. If the majority of them go, bonkers, what are you doing that for? Then we need to change our policy. We can't just rely on policies from yesteryear. And that's why that stuck in my mind, because I just thought, there's other forces who would just say, no, you failed on vetting. And that would ripple through the community, because that PCSO would then be bitter, would probably leave, will have told 20, 30, 40 people that Sussex is not the force to join. Instead, they reversed it by making a very sensible decision. So good for them.
The easy thing to do, and I'm going to quote one of your guests, Brendan, that's going to be coming on, John Sutherland, who I know.
Right. Yeah.
And John uses a phrase which I love, which isn't his phrase, so he's pinched it from someone, but he uses it a lot, which is every contact leaves a trace.
Yeah.
It does, and he's so right when he says that. Every contact does leave a trace. So when we don't treat people fairly, the way that we want to be treated ourselves, you talk about criminalisation of young children. When they're 14 and they steal a Mars bar, and you know what, we've prosecuted them. And forever and a day, they're going to have a P&C record. Well, do you know what? Every contact leaves a trace, and that person is going to grow up with that perception of what that police service is. If that PCSO gets turned away, or that candidate from the communities gets turned away because of what they were born into, as opposed to what choice they made, which is like that, that impact is going to be huge. And it's no different to what I say to my officers and my staff. If you don't treat people the way that you want to be treated as a leader, then people will not gravitate. People won't feel that this is an employer of choice. That's why it's so important. So that every contact leaves a trace is a great sort of analogy around recruitment.
I think it isn't John's. Is it Locard's principle, something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, got it. Right. So let's see if we can take some questions from the chat room. And thank you everyone for posing these. Let's see if we can whisk through them really quickly, because so we can get as many done as possible. Anna is saying the Met's created a fast track way for specials to join as police officers, and I believe this is being followed by West Midlands. Does Nottinghamshire Police have any plans to adopt this fast track route or provide any support for special constables? There you go. So a minute to answer that one, Sukesh.
Good question. I'm also the leader of the special constabulary as well for my sins. Great team, great cadre of volunteer officers. The short answer is yes, we do. So we've got a 2-year expedited degree programme at Derby University, which we're working on. And for those people, there will be a special, and then once they finish their degree programme, they're straight in. So they will literally do their degree, and then they're doing special in their spare time as a part of the degree course. And as soon as their course is over, they will then do an interview. If they pass that, they're into the job without any training. So that's one route. The other route that we're doing around is around testing. So I told you at the very beginning of the webinar, we've dragged 10 people out of the current cohorts because of the COVID challenge. All of them are specials. When they land back at training school, we are looking to expedite their training. So it's normally 15 weeks. I think that we'll get it down to around 6 weeks because of the enhanced training they have already. And then we're looking at actually continuing that process as we move forward. So specials will be trained in smaller cohorts. So I think that's just about 1 minute, and I've answered.
Right, brilliant. No, that's good. Thank you. And that's like that new normal that's going to emerge again. Yeah. I remember when I was a trainer at Bruce Police Training Centre, the district training centre. You can't find it now, by the way. It's a housing estate. But this was where all police officers are trained in the Northwest. It was 1998. And I had a lieutenant commander from the Royal Navy who changed careers after 15 years, 20 years, something like that in the Royal Navy. He joined the police service. And both him and I, we couldn't figure out why he had to do a 2-year probation still like everyone else. This guy just a few months before was commanding a frigate. Yeah. And, you know, we're saying to him that you've got to have, 2 years. It was 2 years in 1985. Yes. And now it's, you know, if we define people's progress by the number of years, I think we're missing a trick there, especially with some of these skills and experiences that people bring to the service.
Yeah, I agree. Fast track would have been an ideal one for him or her.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, just you know, he was amazing. I was going to him for advice most of the time. So let's have another question here from Curtis. Another sort of 1 minute answer. What sort of things are we doing at Nottinghamshire Police, not only to get cohorts through training, but for the actual application process, like interviews, fitness, and medicals? And I know medicals is causing an issue for some individuals because they're being told by the GP surgeries that, I'm sorry, your medical is not on the list of priorities, understandably, because of COVID.
No, right, 1 minute then, very quickly. Fitness tests, we're allowing people to do that on their own video and send it into my OST team. So what we're doing is giving them a set of advice or a set of guidelines about, you know, the distance and what we expect. And then it's as simple as get your friend to video you from a safe, socially acceptable distance, clearly. Do your bleep test, send it through, and we tick it off. We'll still need you to do it when you join the job, but that's expediting that. Around medicals, there's a lot of work going on with the college. I had a conference call at the beginning of the week, and we're looking at a self-declaration around medical fitness. And then what we will do, once they join, there will be a caveat around them having to do a full medical process. And if they haven't disclosed everything honestly, well, clearly then we're into the integrity and honesty discussion, but we're looking to try and get like that. Around interviews, we're going to be using online technology such as Zoom or other programs where we can sit there and talk to our candidates. So we don't have to go to the 1980s and ring them on a phone, but also we don't have to bring them into the building. And actually today we've got an inspectors board going on across the corridor in the chief officer area. And one of those is being done via an online program because that particular officer is self-isolating.
Some would say, why weren't the police doing this a decade ago? But, a crisis sometimes is the enabler of innovation. Do you know there's going to be so many people who are practicing in car parks because, you've got some really committed people who are following, I tell them all, look, do one thing every day. Take one piece of action every day. It's going to take you close to your goal. And we've got people out there who are going to disused car parks or marking out the distance using the distance, from the car parking spaces. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, they are practicing the bleep test, and they're getting odd looks from security guards and stuff like that. But that makes so much sense. Just video that, you've passed the bleep test, and, you're coming in conditional on doing it again and conditional on your medical being fine. This has got to be the way forwards.
If you look at all the pubs that are now closed because of COVID, and you work out, I think it's around about 5 parking bays along, 15 metres. Don't take that, measure it out. Don't take my word on it, but depends on how big the cars are and where you live in the country. But also, if you look at those, you got your white lines to work to. You just take the video. It's really simple. You can go and train there in the morning. You can do your one bit of exercise a day there. It's really, really easy to do. But we are really looking to try and expedite everything.
Excellent. So I hope that answers your question, Curtis. And I'll ask, we'll do a couple more and then we'll bounce into some of the questions I've got. Actually, no, a question here, because we're talking about online interviews. I suppose that segues perfectly into, okay, so we can't do the Search Assessment Centre at the moment. We can't do the Day One Assessment Centre at the moment because they're like coronavirus carousels. There's no way we can do those. So College of Policing have said publicly there'll be an online solution in 3 or 4 weeks' time. And we've got everyone thinking, what's that going to be? Now, I've already given my thoughts on YouTube videos about what that could be, what that could look like. How's that shaping up?
It's shaping up really well, Brendan, because I'm working with the college on helping to try and solve it. So we are doing some testing on the 15th of April on the online programme. So it's going to be a virtual assessment centre. I've tried to give it a jazzy name when I spoke to the college, so let's see if they take my particular name on board. I wanted to call it VAS, virtual. Right. But we're doing that. We're trialling it through our new cohort, so we're going to use them as the guinea pigs. And then I think the college have been working actually pretty hard on getting this through. We hope to be potentially going live with a solution towards the end of the month, so maybe early May. So I don't think they're hanging about, and certainly I've been in conversation with the team, the development team at the college, and as I said, I do know that we are practicing some testing next week and the week after.
Brilliant. A lot of people were thinking College of Policing are going to get that done in 3 or 4 weeks' time, but I think there's going to be chief officers on them saying, "Come on, we need a solution." Yeah. And is there any reason why we can't run a role play, for example, via technology? Is there any reason why we can't do an interview via technology? There's no reason why we can't do a written exercise using technology, because when we delivered the CKP, we did that. The tech is there. We've just got to put it all together, bundle it all in a package. And it's got me thinking there really about, if that works and it works well, and we bring in more people from more diverse backgrounds, why would we ever go back to search when, we're back in our new normal or the day one? Because, look, I know there's some issues around search. The adverse impact ratio is less than 0.80. For those of you who don't know what the adverse impact ratio is, you divide the percentage of people who pass a white British by the percentage of people who pass a Black, Asian, minority ethnic or English as second language. And if you get a number that's below 0.80, well, listen, even in the United States, it would be unlawful. Federal law, I believe, says it would be unlawful. So search has had that problem. It's been less than 0.80 for several years. The new day one interim evaluation has released data that suggests it's 0.71. What are your thoughts on that, Sukesh, about, why do we want to return back to something that's actually indirectly discriminating against people?
Well, in short, we might not. And I think that's a conversation for after we see the results from the virtual assessment centre and see how that fares. And I think one of the things, as we've discussed before, around search assessments and day one, and I went with our chief constable to London a few weeks ago before the lockdown to go and have a look at day one at I can't remember what the building is now. The Empress building.
Empress building, yeah.
Phenomenal building at the Met. But we went there to go and watch it, and we've got our own thoughts. We met the design team afterwards. The world might change, because it might be more efficient to do it online. It might be more cost effective. It might, we might be doing our bit for the ozone layer and the environment. We might be actually enabling more diverse search assessors, day one assessors, to do it. So there might be a real flavour and an appetite to move across and look at that. We won't know that until we do it. One thing I would say about the adverse impact ratio, I know we've spoken about that, is, in NOTS, we've worked together with you to support our candidates in readiness for search. I don't know whether all forces do that. We put our money straight on the table and said, we want to help our candidates be absolutely at the top of their game. One of the things and it is something to share, one of the reasons why search perhaps has not always delivered as well is, well, there's a number of reasons. I think part of it is the assessors, and I don't think that's a secret. We look at the diversity of our assessors and actually come up to like 2020 and recognise that we might need some different thought in there. We talk about neurodiversity and everything else. Is that even acknowledged? The second part is that every force has got a different filter mechanism. So I know there's some forces that you apply, and if you get through that initial sifting, you're straight to search. And actually, we do things slightly different in NOTS. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but what we will do is we will actually do a full CVF application form. So we know the candidate has got the right values, the right attitude, they understand the CVF, and we break it down quite simply. And then afterwards, there'll be what I think is a really straightforward CVF-based interview, which is about you. It's about you. It's not about, telling a story. It's about telling you, talking about you. And that for us is really good, because it allows our team to get to know the candidate. Questions such as, why do you want to be in NOTS Police? What makes you to be a police officer? Well, I'm sorry, if you can't answer that, you shouldn't be even applying. So we are really going to basics to try and get the real them. And it's only once we've got through those gates, which aren't complex gates, that we then get them prepared for search. And that's when we've done work with yourself, Brendan. So in terms of our scores at search, I don't know how they fare nationally, but we sure as have tried to push to make sure our candidates are right and ready before they go to search. And I think that hasn't been true of all forces, and that will obviously have an impact on the results.
Yeah, I think this. Without getting into this big debate about the search assessment centre, but it's well over a decade old. I've said before that I could probably coach my 11-year-old daughter to pass it. And you could get through that and hide your true values. Whereas I know when you're at a face-to-face interview, because I think one of the issues with search is it's mostly retired police officers who are doing the assessing. I may be wrong, I stand to be challenged, but it just seems like that, because who else is going to have 8 to 10 weeks of every year spare to do search assessment centre? And so, I know what the force looked like back in the 80s because I was there. So they were mostly white British and white males. So that there's the unconscious bias issues, but it just all needs a big shake-up, I think. And the thing that I keep stressing to people is, look, when you get to this final interview, or for yourselves there, it's like this competency and values framework pre-assessment centre interview, there's only one way forward, and that's to be the real, authentic and emotional self. Share something of your emotions and your values, because I know that if you're on the other side of the desk, what you're really thinking is, can I see this person on one of my teams? Yeah. If they're quoting cliches and all sorts of phrases from the competency and values framework, but I've done this myself. I just look at them and just think, I'm sorry, I don't know who you're trying to impress, but it's not me, because I can't see you fitting in on my teams. You've not got the DNA of this force. I can't see you plugging in.
And with that, you've mentioned something which is poignant to talk about, which is unconscious bias. So, at the very beginning when I said about the independent advisory group sitting on our views, the vast proportion of our interviewers have undergone unconscious bias awareness. You can't train your unconscious bias because it's there, but you can be aware of it. And so what we've done is we've worked extremely hard with those people to make sure that we've got the right people, right people with the right values to do those interviews. And that's really, really important. You're right. So, I mean, but in defense of day one, I went with a very skeptical mind down to see it because I was sort of tarnished with what's gone on in the past. And I saw day one at the Met, and they were very kind to host us. And Dr. Sam Peach gave us, the vast proportion of the day with a bit of an open ticket to have a look. And in virtually all of the assessment centre rooms, they were members of the community, which was quite neat to see. I think there was only one scenario I went in and there was a retired officer, and I could tell that he was straight away. You know, from speaking to him, I just said to him, "You ex-Met?" And he goes, "Yeah." You just, you can just tell. But the vast number, in fact, 90%, 99% of those assessors were young. In fact, there was a young BAME female who had studied at Nottingham, and she'd gone back to London, and she was one of the assessors there. It's great. I didn't manage to persuade her to join the police, but she loved assessing the future candidates. And these are the right sort of characters that we need to make sure that we are genuine and reflective of society when we're assessing who polices those people.
Yeah, and I think day one, I've got to say, the feedback I get from day one is that it's a big improvement on search. It's tapping into the values a little bit more. The breadth in terms of, like you say, the diversity of the assessors is far more improved. How that will work outside of London, I don't know, because London's already weighted more towards, BAME assessors being more readily available, and the same with the role players as well. So I'm not quite sure how that would pan out, but certainly placing someone in a scenario where you're going to say, right, imagine you're a police officer in 6 months' time and you're going to deal with two people having a dispute or a vulnerable person. It's far more of a realistic test, I think, of someone's future behaviour than imagine that you're a customer services officer at a shopping centre that doesn't exist, dealing with role players that have got absolutely no emotions whatsoever, and then that we're asking them to just act naturally and just be themselves. Bonkers. So day one, I think, has got a lot going for it. I think there's still a lot of work to do to find out why is it still producing an adverse impact ratio that is not favourable, but it's work in progress, and it's good to hear your views on that. All right, so let's get back to some more questions from our chat people, and we've got here, let's see, Lucy saying she works in retail and is looking to reapply to West Yorkshire Police in May. Would it help if I applied a more relevant position within the police in the meantime to better my knowledge? I've got my own thoughts on this, but I'm just wondering what you think there, Sukesh.
Repeat that again, Brendan. Sorry.
So she's saying she works in retail and she wants to reapply to West Yorkshire Police, so that would indicate to me that perhaps she didn't pass last time. Would it help if she applied for a more relevant position? I'm not quite sure what that would be within the police to better my knowledge. And I'm just wondering, thinking, retail, you must deal with all sorts. Must be all sorts of difficult decisions and problems to have to deal with.
My first tip to Lucy is apply for NOTS.
I thought you'd say that.
And my second tip is no, because in retail, it's all around customer service. It's around dealing with people. It's about problem solving. It's about how you engage. Retail should give people a real sort of leg up in terms of a lot of the skills that we need. Policing is very similar to retail. It's about serving the customer. It's about serving the public. It's about knowing how to talk. It's about knowing how to communicate. It's understanding when to make decisions. So no, I would say not. I'd say she probably needs a little bit of tweaking and feedback as to why she didn't get through at West Yorkshire. What stage was it? And then learn about that particular element. But I'd say, when you look at all of the issues that COVID's brought and the challenge to the retail sector, the challenge to the, even the airline industry, a lot of those people who've been cabin crew deal with confrontational passengers, tight and difficult situations, have to have customer service. They're ideal. They are absolutely ideal. Service. So I would say no. I'd say stick true to your values and just understand where you went wrong.
Yeah, I'd mirror that as well, because I sometimes hear people saying, I really want to be a police officer, but I think I'll go and do X, Y, and Z first. And I think, well, why? Because if you want to be a police officer, if that's your goal, if that's your vision, and like you said before, you need to know your why. If you don't know why you want to be a police officer, then you're going to struggle. So if you know your why as well, why this is important to you, why this is going to give you a sense of self-fulfillment, then, and if this is where you are, now here, and that's where you want to be, then don't go that way. Don't go that way. Go straight for the thing that you want to achieve. So I'd say the same thing there, Lucy. Follow your dream, follow your heart, and go for it, and work on what needs to be improved for next time. So for everyone, put yourself in difficult situations, give 120% without being asked to do so. Find problems, find people who are struggling, support people, support change, manage change, challenge any inappropriate behavior. Do these things and do it from your heart. And when you get to your interview, you'll be rocking and rolling. You'll have no problem at all. Okay, let's go to another question. So Gary's asking, why do you think some forces seem slow to react and get technology-based assessments set up? There's 43 forces out there if we don't include CNC, BTP, and Ministry of Defence Police. So yeah, is that the way forward? Some struggling, some not.
It depends on how much the force has invested in the tech and how much they got in IT, quite simply. So I've seen some forces where only senior officers will get laptops. It's not the case where we are. We've invested massively. I think we signed a cheque off for nearly £400,000 for hardware alone for Uplift, around laptops and kit and equipment. Big money, eye-watering money, but it's because we need everyone to be agile, irrespective of COVID. Why would I want people to be turning up and having to go to the station to use the computer? That's like it was when I joined. You had to go to the station to log on. Well, now people can log on in the car, at a lay-by whilst they're giving some visible patrol or visible reassurance. We can train them at home. It's just about the force and what they have done around investing in tech. That's as simple as it is.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the future. And I'm looking at Greater Manchester Police just posting on Twitter photographs of a comms operator in his living room, taking calls from members of the public. If the new normal for the assessment centre is, I don't know what it's going to look like. You've probably got a better feel than me. I'm sure you have, Sukesh. But, if there is a confrontation situation to deal with, in 10, 20 years' time, why would you go to their house? Why wouldn't you just log into the equivalent of Zoom, the force-owned system, whatever it might be, and just speak to them face to face? Like you say, phone calls, bit 1980s. So,
Brendan, you think about our call centres. Our call handlers and our dispatchers are dealing with confrontational people all the time, but they can't see them. But they still got a reason with that, and that's it's the same ethos. It's no different. So there's a way to do that.
Yeah, because we're missing out on so much of the communication if it's just verbal. So let's just see. Someone saying, Daniel saying he's applied to Sussex, waiting for my final interview, which was cancelled. They've now confirmed these will take place via Skype or conference call, but not worked out how they'll conduct the face-to-face aspects of vetting. I think you just covered that. You covered that already. So listen, each force is in a different place. And what, I'm just amazed that, they've not just shut down and said it's too hard to do. They're getting on with it, which is good. So Khalid is saying, hope you're both well. What if I pass the final interview and fail somewhere on the vetting? Will I get another chance to reapply, and will I have to go through the whole process again? That's an interesting question. I'll give you an example. I'm going to name and shame the force, Devon and Cornwall, because I was very upset with them. They took a candidate for a police officer all the way to final interview, all the way through the vetting, and all the way through checking the qualifications, where they found out that because she was an older candidate, she'd not got a level 3 qualification, because a lot of people in the 80s and 90s left school before 18 because you didn't have to stay on till you were 18. They didn't get a level 3 qualification, didn't even have the opportunity to do so. An enormous amount of life experience, and she was gutted, and they wouldn't take a life experience as an equivalent for level 3. So instead they said, what about PCSO? And she said, yeah, that sounds great, I'll do that. When do I start? Oh no, you've got to start all over again. Now, good for her, she did. She started all over again with the application form and went throughout the whole process, and then she's in. I hope she knows who she is. She's an amazing individual. And come on, Devon and Cornwall, get a grip. So this is mirrored really in this. will I get another chance to reapply? Will I have to go through the whole process again?
So the answer, if I take you back to what I said earlier on about that candidate who was on a final written warning as a volunteer, is we will just go back to that stage and resubmit and look. We will take each case on its merit, but the question I would say to your candidate is, if we've paid as a force for you to go through search, and if we've put the time to put you through all those aspects of it, why would we want to go and do that all again? What's the point?
Yeah.
The way I operate is I think about it as taxpayers' money. So that's another, well, it's in excess of £100 of taxpayers' money that I've got to pay to put you through search again. So it will all be based on that particular scenario. There isn't a rule book to say this is what we'll do in X, Y, and Z. We'll look at it case by case. But in effect, if it was a case of vetting, but there was something we could do to mitigate it, as I said earlier, or to rectify the issue, we will look at doing that. So
great stuff. So that's good to hear. Good to hear. And I'm just going to say we timed this for an hour, but we can keep going for a bit longer if that's okay with yourself, Sukesh.
Yeah,
we've got a load of questions here. We'll see if we can get through these questions and do a sort of minute or two answer. And I've got to apologise for the background noise. You know, this is the new normal. I operate from a summer house at the bottom of the garden, and my next door neighbours decided it's time to do some drilling. So, hey, but that's the way things are today. You know, I can't afford to be in a comfy office somewhere because I can't justify that travel. You okay to continue, Sukesh?
No problems. No problems.
Yeah, brilliant. So let's just see. Let's whiz through them as fast as we can here, because you know what I'm like. I can talk forever. Let's see. So it's from Khaled, from Danny. For yourself, have you had any ex-military guys wanting to join firearms who've been able to do a shortened version of their probation? That's interesting. You know, MDP and CNC recruit straight into firearms. Are we at the point where we would be looking at direct entry firearms? And if not, why not?
Well, short answer is I recruited a CNC transferee. They've not been a part of the Home Office force before. Normally, they would have to go through a full programme of probation, and I've recruited them and they've gone straight onto the ARVs. They need to get upskilled because their level of firearms training, I'm not going to bore people on here, but there are different levels of training. To train them to AFO standard. The rest of the country, Home Office forces need a different standard, which is called ARV. So we have to then upskill those officers, but we have done it. In terms of the military, we've got people who are ex-military on our current cohorts. We wouldn't be expediting anything in terms of probation to fast track them onto firearms. And the reason why we wouldn't do that is because firearms is one of those roles where lots and lots of people want to go onto it from all backgrounds. So we've got people that are, you know, been wanting to go on it. We've got a constant process, a yearly process of recruitment. It's not, it's not, as we used to call it in the job, dead man's shoes. You know, I spent 10 years as an AFO and an SFO. I was a sergeant, a PC and an inspector all on that team, and I loved it. I've got a great affinity to firearms, and we've got loads of opportunities on that department. So when people come in, we will look at placing them in the right place, but there are opportunities to go through, absolutely.
Just wonder if that's the similar picture in other forces, though, because I'm hearing that some forces actually have vacancies in firearms.
I think they are. I think there are national vacancies, and it depends again on, you know, if you look at the Met have a lot of roles for AFO standards only. So the gate guard duty, for instance, smaller forces, the non-Met police ones, won't have that. I don't even think GMP or West Midlands would. They'll all be ARV standard, which is pretty much the same across the forces. And therefore, there is the course. I mean, to put it into context, when I was on the ARVs, my firearms course was 5 weeks when I did it, which was 2 years ago, and I probably had hair back then. The ARV course now is 50. I think it's about 12 weeks. Sorry. So it just shows you the difference in the course length. Now, we can't just expedite people from military into that, but a lot of the people from the military have got all the skills and attributes to go onto those teams. So, but there is a very different ethos on our firearms teams in the police as there is to the military because of the rules of engagement. So we've just got to be really careful around that. It's an area, but absolutely, there's nothing to stop people who are ex-military. We've got loads of great people, and I still think that the door has to be open to people from the military because they bring so much to the party.
Absolutely, and I think sometimes they struggle with the recruitment process because they've not been quite prepared for it. And the experience I have lots of the time is having to sort of demilitarize them with the greatest of respect to them. Yeah, it's interesting, that interesting debate about going into different roles and taking advantage, not advantage, that's the wrong way, but utilizing people's experience that's gone before them. So Danny, you've asked a very similar question, so I think it's just been answered about a bit of sergeant in UKSF. I'm not quite sure what that is. UKSF, what's that, Sukesh? Do you know?
Special Forces.
Oh, right, okay, wow. I'd like to go to Met SO19, go on to ARV and CTF-SFO. Interested to know if you knew of any guys from similar backgrounds who got firearms, shortened version, probation. Yeah, I think you just mentioned that, but what I'd say to everyone is, look, you know, before you're even in the service, check out the wealth. Once you're in, check out the wealth of different opportunities that exist for you, because, you know, I never thought for one moment I'd be the most amazing part of my career would have been neighbourhood policing as a neighbourhood inspector. You know, the closest I ever got to partnership working was having an argument with someone from the CPS about a charging decision. But this was the best role I had, but it's never one I thought I was going to go into. So, you know, just keep the opportunities open, join, take a look around, and you may find that actually firearms isn't something. You may find your dream elsewhere. So that's the advice I'd give to you there, Danny. Just to say, let's see.
One from Khalid, Brendan.
What's that, sorry?
There's one which we skipped over, which says, I really want to be a police officer with Nottinghamshire. I'd be the only one in my entire family tree to become a police officer. What advice would you? That's my final interview. I was going
to actually, that went on. That's oh yes, Khalid asked 2 questions. So yeah, let's go for that one. Go on then.
Well, what I would say is to Khalid, drop an email to the following email address, and we will talk to him face to face. So if you send an email to Operation Uplift, all one word, so that's Operation Uplift at nottinghamshire.pnn.police.uk. If you drop us an email, Khalid, we will send you some information that Claire's put together around final interviews.
Great stuff. And my guess is that if anyone's got any inquiries at all about joining in Nottinghamshire, that's the email address to address it to.
That's the one. That's the one.
Yeah, brilliant, lovely. So let's see what else we've got. So Curtis is saying, what support is available for less represented groups? So I think I know what the answer to this is, but go on, Sukesh.
The answer is lots and lots. So we've only got a short amount of time, but we do an awful lot around positive action at the beginning. Please look on our webinars. There's 2 tomorrow, so please log on and watch them. They're only about 45 minutes, and you can ask all questions there. But we do a lot of work around going to the communities. We don't expect them to come to us, we go to them. So we look at all sorts of places, from colleges, from schools, places of worship, community centres. We've got a programme called Engage to Recruit, so all our neighbourhood staff are empowered to go out and identify talent in their own neighbourhoods and encourage people to come in. We work in tandem with Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue, so we're doing a lot of work in terms of joint community cohesion events with those. You know, we were going to have Stephen Lawrence Day in April, which has now been cancelled, but we had it last year. We celebrate all faiths, all events, everything going on. When people come forward, we work with them around support. We give them a mentor, we give them a coach. We work with them through the application form process. We will support them around interview prep. We've worked with Brendan around preparing people in readiness for search, and we've paid so that you don't have to pay for that particular really good and insightful opportunity. And all the way along the journey, we are supporting people at every step of the way. So it's not a case of you're on your own. You know, you've got support at every step of the way, and we are really keen to press that. It is worthy of note that the Home Office Race Disparity Unit and also the Positive Action Practitioners Alliance both came to inspect us in February, and they both came away and gave us a glowing review of what we're doing. We're really proud that we're probably, you know, at the forefront of police forces where we do get asked by other forces about what we're doing, because we're so hell-bent on pressing forward with a programme where we support all protected characteristics. We're not just sort of, targeting specific areas. I mean, we've got the highest number of applications from LGBT candidates in the country. I think that got into the Daily Mail, I think, about a month or two ago. We're tracking around about 30% BME, which is good. Our figures around 55-45 male-female. We've got a number of people who have joined, who have got single-parent families. They've got young children, so we're flexible around that. So we really are looking at the whole suite of options. And if they want any more sort of advice, then feel free to use the email address I'm going to put on the screen.
Excellent, thank you. And this is what this is the only reason why I'm working alongside yourselves, is because of that whole joined up approach, and it's not a silo approach. And one of the things I particularly liked is that recruitment is not just the responsibility of the recruitment team. This is something that the Peel Regional Police do incredibly well in Canada, where they see that every one of their officers is an ambassador for the force, and actually everyone from sergeant upwards is pretty much required to take some form of community engagement approach to encourage people to join the force as role models. So I think there's opportunities to learn from other parts of the world there. But that's one thing I liked about, your officers, all your officers are ambassadors. It's not the responsibility of the positive action team, it's everyone's responsibility, and I like that. Good. Yeah. All right, let's push on there. So BB saying he's got my results from assessment centre, but no email to say how successful. Has it been an issue for many others? I can talk from around the country. At this moment in time, there's all sorts of little hiccups, problems, but everyone's doing their best. If you've got your results, you've got your results. You'll get the email eventually. Charlie's saying, I took an assessment centre last year for Notts Police, was unsuccessful. Still want to be a police officer. Just wondering, do I need to go through the application stage, or do I book another assessment? That's Charlie asking that one, Sukesh. I think we might have touched on that before, but if you want to sort of nail it down.
It's as before. Drop us a line and we'll have a look. It depends on when the assessment centre was, how long ago, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
We look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Great stuff. From Bluelight to all panelists, how can someone from Bluelight be? Anyway, someone's called themselves Bluelight, which is fab. I was recently unsuccessful with the Met Police. It's not me, by the way. For a police officer role, can I still apply for another force, or do I have to wait 6 months again? You have to wait 6 months as far as I'm aware, but if you look at the College of Policing website, they've not squared off the whether it's a difference between day one and search. What they say is that you've failed search, you can't go back, you can't apply for 6 months. Whether you could fail day one and apply straight away to another force who runs search, I don't know. I think the idea behind the 6 months is you don't go back to the same version of the assessment centre, but I know that the search assessment centre has not changed since September 2015, apart from a few little tweaks. So I've asked you a question before, why 6 months? Why not 3 months? And I think that's actually a thing now. Why not 6 weeks? Why not 6 days? I don't know if you can speak to that, Sukesh.
Well, I don't know what aspect of recruitment they've failed at. So all it said, unsuccessful with the Met for a police officer role. So it depends. I mean, for me, I'm a believer in, we've had one candidate, for instance, who failed by 1%. And I look at that and I go, well, on the balance, it's just like, let's have a look at what we can do, because it just seems bureaucratic. And I know it's a computerized score sheet, but we need to bring a bit of common touch to this as well in times of crisis, especially when we're looking at uplift as well. We're looking at bringing in 1,000 workers. We've got to think smarter. We've got to think about the economy as well. Depends on where Bluelight has dipped in that process, but certainly with how the process is in most forces, what I'd say to them is start to look at getting yourself ready to apply again, because most forces will take you through the process again. They won't say don't come until your 6 months is up, because by the time the process has run its course, it might be 6 months or even longer. So I would say it's an individual part as to what part you've dipped in the force.
Yeah, and that's 6 months. I asked the College of Policing years ago when we were a provider for their qualifications, and no one could give me an answer as why 6 months. It's almost like someone's just plucked out a number that seems about right for some reason. But in any case, it is what it is, and sometimes the golden rule applies. Those who hold the goal, make the rules. So Danny's saying thanks very much for the response. Khaled's saying thank you. Hey, we're almost at the end here now. Sukesh has put the email address on there. Operation Uplift at Nottinghamshire Police. Operation Uplift at Nottinghamshire.pnn.police.uk. A couple of quick questions. So, is there a reason? Jess is saying, is there a reason some forces are still doing face-to-face interviews when it'd be safer to do them online? My final interview with West Yorkshire Police in a week is still face-to-face. I don't want to miss the opportunity, but can I guarantee it's COVID-free place? I don't know what your thoughts on this, Sukesh, are, but no, they can't guarantee it's a COVID-free place. No one can. My guess is, Jess, you're going to get an email very soon that says your interview is cancelled or being rearranged. It's going to be online. I don't know what your thoughts are there, Sukesh, about having face-to-face interviews.
I won't be advocating it. In my force, we're not doing that. We're doing it online, as I said to you. You can't guarantee it's COVID-free. You can't guarantee anything with this particular illness. So what we've got to do is we've got to take sensible action, and that the most sensible thing is as the advice says, stay indoors. An interview isn't actually a key worker's role. It's not something that we need to do in terms of law enforcement or serving. It's a part of a recruitment process. So why would we do that? We wouldn't.
Yeah, Jess, I've given this advice to others who have said, what shall I do? And I said, well, follow your heart. But my advice is stay at home and save lives. Just stay at home, save lives. If a force is insisting on a face-to-face process, and I can't see any of them doing that at the moment, then, just say not yet. I've decided to stay at home and save lives. I mean, no one's going to call you out on that. No one at all. So, Jess, be true to yourself. Stay at home, save lives. We've been at home now, and you probably heard the kids in the garden there. We've been at home now for 4 weeks, and it's tough, but it's saving lives. So, Jess, do that. Get in touch with them. I think you'll get. I'm 100% sure you're going to get an email from West Yorkshire to say it's being rearranged. It'll be online. Daniel's saying, it sounds like a fantastic force. Hope reps from other forces are watching this. Well, I'll perhaps give them an opportunity to have their say in another week. Curtis, I think, is saying, I failed the assessment centre for Knots last April by 1%. Does this mean there's a chance I could go straight back to search? I think we've answered that one already, haven't we, Sukesh? Yeah, from Curtis. I'm going to wrap up if I can, because it's been incredible having you on, and I really appreciate your sort of forthright honesty. And I know that everyone who's watching this will really appreciate everything that you've said and your contribution to this webinar. But I'm going to finish off with one question, if I can, and it's a question I love to ask representatives of forces. How would you describe the difference between success and fulfillment in an officer's career?
Success and fulfillment. How I differentiate between that is we have success all the time. When we get results, we have success. When we achieve something, we have success. Fulfillment is something that is in here, and you can't take that away. And it's that feeling of a sense of purpose. It's a sense of belonging. The only way I can describe it is, and the way I talk to people around this is that, when you go home, you feel like you've done that bit extra for the community and you've been a part of something special. That's fulfillment. That is where you know that you haven't simply turned up to work. Policing is a vocation. It isn't just a 9 till 5. You don't join the police service for the paycheck. That's a byproduct of it. And I think that, the pay and conditions are getting better, but you come because you want to make a difference. And that is fulfillment. When you do feel that feeling, that is what you are. I was talking with 4 officers yesterday on the back of the training centre, so 4 operational officers who are about to go out, and they're all a little bit concerned, clearly, with the situation going on and their own personal safety and the safety of everyone else. But there is that still that public duty, that sense of we need to deliver this, we need to keep people safe, and we've got a job to do. And when you deliver that, that's when you get fulfillment.
Brilliant, lovely. And I think that's just a great way to end this webinar. Thank you very much, Sukesh. It's been brilliant having you on board. For those of you who've contributed in terms of the chats, thank you so much for your questions. There's some really challenging questions there, and I know we've got some really honest answers, and I didn't sense any cliches coming from Sukesh, so there's no corporate anything there. It was brilliant to have you talking from your heart. Thank you again. For those of you who may have just joined the last 10 minutes of this and you're thinking, oh, I wish I could have watched all of it, you can. There will be a recording of this available. It will go out on YouTube, it will go out on Facebook, it will go out on LinkedIn. And for those of you who are part of the absolutely amazing, the 10,000 plus members of the Bluelight Police Recruitment Facebook support group, supporting each other in an ethical way to join the service. Many of the members are serving officers. Many of the members now are actually people from HR teams, recruitment teams and police forces. So that's where the conversation continues. Ask to join that conversation, and all you need to do is tell me why you want to be part of that group, and undoubtedly I'll let you in. I think I've had someone who was it was a porn bot, it was a porn Facebook page try and get through once, and obviously clearly they were turned away. And Daniel's saying big thanks to both of you. Anything finally you'd like to say, Sukesh? Oh, there we go.
And I'll send you that. I will send you that around the recruitment webinars. So if you can post them, send them, however you do it, Friends Invest, you are the guru around that. We will send you that. So if you can share that with your team, and if people want to come on board, we'll very much welcome them at those sessions. Brilliant stuff. Well, thanks very much, Sukesh. We'll speak soon. And for those of you who are becoming keen fans of these webinars and podcasts, please join me on Friday, where we have a podcast with no other than John Sutherland. Some of you may know him as @PoliceCommander on Twitter. John Sutherland, speaker, author, gentleman, a real gentleman. So, not saying you're not, Sukesh, you're a real gentleman as well, but John Sutherland, join me on Friday morning at 10 o'clock. Get your cup of coffee, put on a pot of tea, join me then, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now, everyone. I'm going to end the meeting now. Bye-bye.